3, 2, 1. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening's exa.tours Silicon Valley school trip discussion. Little bit of a story. A couple of months ago, we were thinking, oh, we're in lockdown. Can we do school trips? Yes, we can. Can we really? Let's do virtual school trips. And I asked in different places and social media, hey, everybody, where is the best place to go on a school trip? And I was kind of hoping they were going to say Bletchley, London. And some people said, Silicon Valley. I thought, oh, gosh, that's causing me a problem. Has anybody been to Silicon Valley? And these three volunteers put their hands up and said, I've been to Silicon Valley, Alan. So I'll introduce you to our guests this evening. But the plan of this evening's event is, I'll put it on the table. I've never been to Silicon Valley. I've been to the United States about 20 years ago on a holiday with my brother, and we never ventured that far. But these three guests have. To me, it seems a very long way to go for a holiday, for a school trip. And I'm hoping that Martin and Theresa are probably going to change my thinking just a little bit to say it is a good trip to do, Ellen. Becci has been on a personal trip, not a school trip, and we'll just have a discussion. So I think what we might do, if I see a sign from Becci, we might start with Becci in a moment. Yep. And then should we go to Martin maybe? And then Theresa? And what will happen is we'll ask each person just to give us a brief introduction to themselves first. So we'd start with Becci, and then Becci say, hello, my name's Becci. I do blah, 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 blah. And here's what I did. And I've got some photos. I will try and share some of these as Becci is talking. And then Martin might do something similar, and Theresa. And then at any point at the end, in between, we may discuss and ask some questions. So Becci, do you want to just start off by telling us a little bit about who you are and how you ended up in Silicon Valley? And I'll see if I can get your photo album as a screenshot.
Sure. So hi everyone, I'm Becci. I have been a computing teacher for about 9 years. I quit teaching last summer, finished off with lockdown learning. That was enough for me. So congrats to everyone who's still doing it. I'm now an educational consultant. I primarily work for the NCCE. So I decided to go to Silicon Valley as part of a holiday. So my main background is actually in media and TV and film. So I was desperate to go out to Hollywood and see kind of that side of things. And I thought, well, while I'm there, why don't I kind of expand my trip and kind of go to San Francisco and see Silicon Valley as well. So we were kind of out there on holiday for about 2.5 weeks. And we had a few days in San Francisco at the start of the trip. And in that we had kind of one day where we went to Silicon Valley on an organized tour. So we were originally going to kind of do a self-drive, and in the end we ended up doing an organized tour instead. So we started off with a journey to the museum that's out there. We didn't get anywhere near long enough there. I think we were there for about an hour, and I was just, this is why I've got so many pictures, was because I thought, oh, I'll just run around everywhere and take a picture of everything, and then I'll look at it later. Needless to say, I haven't really looked at them very much. Yeah, you can see all these pictures here, but the museum is absolutely fascinating. So you definitely need like plenty of time to go and look around that. Then we went to Facebook headquarters. Facebook headquarters is a really boring place to go, really. It is, we just kind of went to the Facebook sign, and then we took a quick selfie, and then that was all there was to see. So really, really quite boring. So not really worth a visit because you can't get anywhere, and there's kind of like Facebook police who just kind of try and shove you off campus if they see you. Then we went to Google HQ, which was much better. So there you could kind of wander around campus. You obviously can't get into any buildings or anything, but we're just able to wander around and see kind of everything in Google themed colours, and able to just kind of see, you know, the facilities that the staff have on offer. You obviously always hear about tech companies and their wonderful facilities. So like they've got volleyball courts and lovely green spaces and outdoor seating and There was one bit which was just full of food trucks. All the employees just get free food. And then there is the Google Playground, I think it's called. And there's kind of different models of all the different versions of Android. So you get like Jelly Bean and Lollipop and all the others. I'm an Apple girl, so I can't remember the names of most of them, but there we go. So there's some of the pictures. So just kind of nice to take a few selfies. And then there's a little gift shop right nearby. So if you wanted to buy any like Google merch, then you can kind of get stuff like that. And then I managed to get us a very brief stop off at this place. Anybody know where this is?
I'm looking at Theresa's face and Martin. They look a bit blank.
Not included as part of the official tour.
Yeah,
Not the
not
HP
sure about that
garage,
one.
is it?
No,
Not
no,
the
it's not the
HP
HP
garage.
It's
It is a garage, a very famous garage where two gentlemen came together
Going
and
to be the
built
Apple
something.
one.
It is. It's the Apple garage. I was absolutely desperate to go. Yeah, we stopped by. There was absolutely nobody there. There's just a little sign at front saying, you know, please be respectful because somebody does live there, obviously. So I was able to stop by and take a little picture. And then we had the lovely journey back to San Francisco in the traffic. So mine was quite a whistle stop tour for the day. Definitely worthwhile. But I'd love to go back and do things with more time. So actually be able to have kind of, you know, more time at the museum without just kind of running around, because I definitely think you could spend a number of hours there. You know, half your day could easily be spent there.
If I can just jump in a little bit,
course you
Becky. So Becky and I have spoken about this, and we've recorded a longer interview as well, which we can share afterwards. But I remember you were saying you didn't go over there specifically just to go to Silicon Valley. You and your husband had planned like a 2 or 3 week adventure.
Yeah.
And this was one of the locations. You'd also planned to go to Los Angeles, Hollywood, and all of these kind of things.
Yeah.
But you're now saying on reflection, you wished you'd allowed more time for Silicon Valley.
Yeah, I think because we were on an organised tour, obviously we were quite restricted with their time. So obviously if you're doing it as a school trip, you know, you should be able to get a coach and just tell them how long you want at each place. So you should, you know, get a bit more control in that sense. But I definitely think if we went back, we'd definitely hire a car and just kind of drive it ourselves so that we could just not have any kind of time limit and just arrive at the museum and then just see how long we ended up spending there before we moved on.
And when we had our extended conversation, you were saying the original plan was to drive around all these locations, but in the end, the way things worked out, you just booked a coach from San Francisco. Is that right?
Yeah, it was just like an organized tour. You can get all sorts of different types, but this was a specific Silicon Valley one, which I was just desperate to do. And
you felt it was kind of, I think the tour that you say you booked was kind of suited more to general purpose. It wasn't necessarily specifically, I knew it just so happened there weren't very many people.
No, we did get quite lucky in that sense. So there was one other person on the tour besides us who also happened to be a teacher. So in the kind of the long drives to and from San Francisco, it was a teacher from Australia. So we were just having a natter about education. But yeah, it was it was really good, and it served the purpose for us. And because like I don't think we'd have known about going to like the Google Playground and things like that. So in that sense, it worked out really well. But I definitely want to go back and have more time there than I think the whole tour was, in terms of time we got in Silicon Valley, it was 2.5 hours. So not very long, but it's just because of the traffic from the city that kind of eats up a lot of it.
And I've got another question, and I'll see if anybody else wants to jump in. So a few people have mentioned something similar. So Oliver in our chat mentioned the HP garage. Theresa thought that the HP garage was it was the Steve Jobs family home that you went to. If you went there, say, because you went there with your husband, if you went there, say, with a school group, would you feel you could go take the children or your students to the HP garage, to the Steve Jobs garage or home, and that they wouldn't, you're shaking your head? No,
I wouldn't. Like for me, like, I mean, I've been using Apple products for like more than 20 years. So for me, that was like a milestone to be able to go and see the garage where it all started. But I definitely think that, I mean, there is nothing to see there. It is the front of a house. And, you know, especially for kids, they're just like, it's just a house. It's just really boring. So although obviously, you know, there are a number of famous garages in the area, I wouldn't do it with the kids. It's just not worth it. There's nothing to see. There's nothing to do. They're just going to get bored.
And I suppose there's also, if that was your only opportunity to go and you had students with you, I can imagine them, oh, miss, can we just go now? Can we go? And you were like, stop, you're spoiling the whole experience for me. I want to enjoy this moment. You think so? Or
yeah, I mean, we were literally there for 2 minutes. It was, you know, take a photo and off we go. But yeah, I think, I would not do it with the kids. Definitely not. Like I don't think I'd bother doing Facebook with the kids because there's nothing to see. You know, museum, Google, and anything else that's there that I'm not aware of that might be a bit more interesting. But
and I suppose as well, what you've noticed yourself is there are a lot of people who go out to Silicon Valley on this kind of tech pilgrimage. Oh, let's go to Instagram, let's go to eBay, and you will find videos of these that people have shared, like the Instagrammer kind of community. And often they'll say, oh, well, here we are at Facebook, and it's just a lot of buildings, can't really see much, because not all of them are very much geared up for the visitor experience. But you did mention the Computer History Museum.
Yeah.
And you said that was one you felt a bit cheated. You wished you'd allowed more time to,
Definitely.
in that. Theresa, Martin, anything you want to add?
I'll just go back to the HP garage because we did actually take some kids there, and it was going to be something that I would. But it is, as Becky said, it's very much you get off, you take a picture, and then you go. And I think excuse my dog. I think the students that we took, because we took kind of year 9 to year 13, they generally appreciated it. Just to see it and see where it was, but it is definitely you kind of get off the bus there, kind of less than 5 minutes, everyone back on, and then off you go. But for me personally, I would still take people there, and it might be something that I do have a look at some of the others as well, going forwards in the future, just because I think they are, if you've got the right students that are interested in that sort of thing, they're probably will like to have that photo and see it. And the HP one does actually have a plaque outside as well, which has got a bit of information about the startings of Silicon Valley.
Something that Martin may mention later on, I just pick it up now as well, is you have to remember as well that some of these, if you look at them on a map, you can go, oh, we could do Facebook, Google, we could drive to all these places. Wow. But what you're not taking into consideration is the traffic around Palo Alto and Menlo Park. You can sometimes spend an hour traveling between one place and another. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
For us, it wasn't too bad, actually.
I think you're right. It does depend on the time you go. Like the worst journey for us was the San Francisco to Silicon Valley, and going in between them wasn't too bad, but it could have just been down to time of day.
See, we stopped in San Jose for 3 nights. So we didn't, when we went to Silicon Valley, we were in San Jose. So we didn't have that same distance travel. We stopped for 2 nights in San Francisco, but the rest of the time we stopped. So we did a split trip. Just meant we didn't have the traffic the same.
If you look
Depends how you tackle it.
If you look at a map, you can almost imagine San Francisco like a lobster claw with the bay, and San Jose is kind of at the bottom of the claw, and then you've got the Golden Gate Bridge at the top. Well, Becky, I know you said you need to nip off a little bit earlier. I'll just say if you can just hang around for a little bit longer, but then when you need to, then thank you for.
Yeah, I'm good for a while. I'm not going to dash out before I've heard what other people have got to say.
So, did I say we'd go to Martin next? Is that right?
I think you did, yes.
Yeah. I've said to people, oh, Martin's been before to Silicon Valley. He said, actually, I've been twice before, Alan. Tell us, and you're going again? Yeah,
we're hoping to go again. So I'm just going to hopefully do a screen share so I can show some photos. Hopefully that's working for you.
Yeah.
So as Alan said, we went for the first time in 2018. I took 24 kids that time, and there were 3 of us teachers going along for the painful journey all the way over to San Francisco. Second time round, we got very lucky because we did it just before the pandemic hit properly last year at February half term. I think we were probably the last set of trips that we actually got away with going.
Mm.
And it was brilliant. Just going to go into a few of the photos, and we did it slightly differently, so hopefully you can see a few of them in here. We did everything from one base, and so we were right on the north point. You can probably see that there, that's Alcatraz. So that's a view from the hostel that we stayed at. And then to the left, you can see the Golden Gate Bridge as well. So we were right in the middle. And we did the same, we went back to the same hostel because I think it just, having that prior knowledge was one of the things that I think was really, really useful. First time round, you kind of go and you kind of have an idea about what it's like, but then there's certain things that you kind of maybe had planned to do, but actually it's not quite the right way to do it. And so we definitely had a bit of an advantage the second time around. But both years we took from year 9 up to year 13, and around about 20 kids. We went for the February half term, which I think works out as the cheapest time to go, and we booked it all through a travel company, and they kind of dealt with most of it. I think, as Becci was saying, it's really there's so much you can do there, and we really crammed things in. The first 2 days we didn't really do masses in terms of different aspects, but we did Six Flags for a little bit of fun, so the kids could just relax after the long flight over. So they had fun there.
That's an amusement park.
So it's a theme park with a zoo. So the kids just went off. They split up in their mini groups, dragging me on a load of the roller coasters, which I love anyway. So it wasn't much of a chore. And then this was part of the second day where we did a walking tour of San Francisco. And we were lucky enough to have the same guide both years, a guy called Michael Purcell, absolutely brilliant. Look him up if you ever do a tour. I can't recommend him highly enough. And he actually joined us on our virtual ones that we did to have a look at it. And I'll share the links with those if you're interested. But I think it's a really good way to see the city. You hop on and off the cable cars and the trams and those sorts of things. And he'll just talk about the history of it. There's one part of it where we were looking at some of the buildings that were designed based around the punch cards because of the time that they were built. And so it's really fascinating. There's a huge amount of history behind San Francisco that's got nothing to do with technology, which is really interesting. And then we did obviously some of the tech things. So this was Intel. If you're doing Intel with a school trip, you've got to book a guide. This guy's name, I think, was Andy. He was brilliant as well. He really kept the kids engaged as he was talking through the development of the Intel chips. So that was a really, really good museum to go to. And when they've not got COVID going on, you can try out the little suits that they have to wear when they're dealing with the processes and making them. And they have a kind of silicon samples around so you can see what it's made of, which is really interesting. We also visited places like Stanford University. We did, as mentioned, the HP garage. We did that at the end of a day. I'd potentially swap that to be at the beginning of a day. We also visited the Tech Museum, which is a little bit like the Science Museum in London, really hands-on, lots of things that you can do. And a lot of it is tech-based, some of it is general science. One year they had an earthquake exhibit, which was good fun. They got a full virtual reality kit, which is as though you're a bird flying through New York, which is good fun. So lots of really good hands-on things going on in there. We also went to Google, and I have managed to gain a bit of a contact at Google, which meant we got a guided tour. So this was inside, I think this was building 41 from memory. So their little reception area while we were waiting to be picked up by our tour guide, who took us up. They did a presentation. They gave us some free t-shirts, which was good fun, and then took us around the rest of the campus. Kind of some of the highlights. I love the fact they've got a T-Rex outside of one of the buildings just because they can. The Android Park, as Becci was talking about, and they were talking. about what goes on there, and some of the things like all the laundry they get, the free bus rides they get in, the sheer speed that they get with their internet connection between the buildings was fascinating to see how they'd got it all up with. And we were talking about their points of failure, which was good for the students. And one thing was really good. The guy that I organised with made sure that he found some of their newbies to come along and talk to us, and it was, both of them just happened to be females just starting up, which was really good for the girls that we had joining, and to see that they can all have a go at becoming a Googler if they wanted to, which was really good.
So did you know, Martin, that they have a special name for new workers?
The new, is it Noogler or something
That's
on those
it.
lines?
Yeah, because there's like a little propeller hat.
Yeah.
And
I have got, or we did take a photo of a couple of the kids with those hats on when we were at the Computer and History Museum. And I definitely second what Becci was saying about that. Absolutely brilliant museum. I think you definitely need 2 to 3 hours there just on its own at a minimum. But there's so much going on there, right from kind of, I think, early computers, obviously kind of things like just abacus and things like that, enigmas. Then they've got various developments through kind of gaming, and I think they had a cray and all sorts of different things, and it's fascinating, and the kids absolutely loved it.
so there is a question. Again, Martin and I, we had an interview about this. We've recorded an extended version, which I will share later on. When I spoke to Becci, I remember Becci saying, "Oh, Facebook was a waste of time trying to go." But I've since heard from people who says, "Oh, I knew somebody who was at Facebook. They invited me in, and we couldn't do this, but we could do the other."
Yeah.
And then I've just heard you, Martin, say,
Yeah.
well, we made contact.
Yeah.
How does somebody go about finding an inside?
Unfortunately, I think it's a little bit of luck. I think it's about getting a friend of a friend who knows someone that works there. That's how I managed to. I was tutoring someone a couple of years before I went on the first trip, and they just happened to say that they've got a brother that was working for Google in Ireland, and then he managed to get the contact first time, but then he passed me on to someone else for the second trip. So I think it's just about finding someone that kind of is a friend of a friend, unfortunately.
Did you have to get down on your knees and plead with somebody, go, please, please, please?
It's not that difficult, actually.
No.
I think once you know someone that works there, it's really easy because they've got loads of going on. So I'm in the middle of planning our part 4 virtual trip, which is looking at Google. And someone's there, they're willing to give up their time to come on these trips and virtual trips, just so that they can show people what it's like there. And typically it's the new people that will come in, they get them to do some almost community service type things to raise the profile and get the next generation of kids in there.
So with your trip in mind and Becci's experiences she told us, I'm trying to imagine perhaps if I was there in a year or two and it was just me and my wife, I might say, oh yeah, I'm a teacher, and I for my classes, could we, so planning this in advance, but using the teacher card, I can use this to inspire my students to go and work in computer science. Whereas when you're actually bringing a school group with you,
I think you definitely need to plan it ahead.
Yes,
and try and work.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the time it's just about getting that right contact. So potentially just contacting Google ahead of time, and you might have to do it 2 or 3 times because maybe the first person just sees it and forgets about it or things like that. And I think you'll kind of get in and eventually it'll get to the right person, but you can't just think, a month before let's get in touch with Google and see if we can get in there. I think you've got to have that plan and think, right, okay, we want to go there, What's going to make it even better is if we can get inside. And the first year they did walk us around their games rooms and where they've got the slides between levels, and the kids are fascinated by it, and it was brilliant. And then
an advantage that Becky would have if somebody changed their plans last minute, Becky was able to, their itinerary could be fairly flexible.
Yeah.
But when you're with a school,
Yeah.
there's no chance of deviating or changing.
I mean, it's really, really set, and I think it's because you're trying to get all these things in. I mean, we were trying to pack in 4 things every day when we went to Silicon Valley, which I think that the kids loved, and we had really packed days, and it wasn't actually too bad, the journey from San Francisco to San Jose and the area around there. For us, I think it'd probably take about an hour and a half, which isn't too bad. I mean, and we were right on the North Point. And I think the time of year you go definitely matters. If you go in the height of their summer season, you're going to be in a lot more traffic because you've got that plus the normal traffic jams and that sort of thing.
And you're planning to go again? It was going to be next year, but now
yeah, it was supposed to be next year. Hopefully it's going to be the year after. And I think one of the things that I'm going to do to make it better is that we're going to look at doing a joint trip with all of the schools in the trust. And we're going to look to see how many we can do so we can get numbers up, hopefully bring the price down, let more students have access to it. One of the things that we did do this time around is our school was quite good in terms of People Premium, and they paid quarter of the price for People Premium students, just to knock the price down a little bit, to try and give them the chance to get there. I mean, granted, it's still an expensive trip, and I think that's unfortunately going to be one of the things that's going to stop some kids getting there. But I think it's just about trying to do what you can, maybe do some fundraising, try and bring the price down. We tend to do it 2 years in advance, so the parents have got a fair amount of warning. They pay about £100 a month until it's obviously all paid off. So just what you can to try and help, really. And hopefully by taking more students, we'll be able to maybe extend it possibly so we can do more. There's I think there's a Tesla museum now as well. I'd love to go and see what I can do with Facebook. There's loads of different things like media. There's a Disney area that they've got. There's all sorts going on in San Francisco that I think would be brilliant to be able to get to if we go next time.
Okay, so thank you very much. So we've heard so far from Becky and Martin. Martin might switch his screen share off for a moment. And our last guest who's joining us this evening. Now, I remember years ago hearing Theresa that you were saying, oh, we're going to be, we're doing a Cisco visit, and I had no idea where Cisco were at that point. Theresa, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're teaching, and your experiences, please. Yeah.
So I've been teaching computer science for about 12 years. So in the last 3 years, I've been working in a private school, but previous to that, I worked in a state school. Our trip was a bit of a weird one. It took 5 girls, nobody else. We'd entered a competition. We didn't win, but we'd been supported by some mentors from Cisco, and they were very keen to fund this trip. So I took some girls who'd never flown before, didn't have passports, girls who probably would never have gone to America, or maybe not at that time. But we took these 5 girls and they had a brilliant time. We did everything. We didn't do we were there only for 5 days. So it was a whistle-stop tour. We did a trip to Santa Cruz. I went to see Lost Boys at fairground. I was really excited. The kids weren't quite as excited because they didn't quite understand why I was excited about it. But we went to Cisco for a whole day. They hosted us. They did Dragon's Den activities. They introduced us to lots and lots of people. We had lunch with them. They sat us around a big table and they talked to all these people and talked about their career choices and how they'd got to work for this company. We just had a great time, but obviously we'd already met members of their staff before. Sylvia from San Jose Heidi from London. So we had lots of contacts before we went, and they were really super keen to us to meet all these VPs who'd funded these girls to go. So basically a VP had done some kind of tax write-off, I think, and paid for a flight for each girl to go. So it was a really great opportunity for them. We did, you know, infinite loop. We just did a bit of a tour around. We went to the Tech Museum in San Jose. We went to the California Museum of Science. We didn't quite do as much techie stuff as I would like to have done. The Tech Museum was amazing, loads of hands-on stuff. And in 2013, some of the stuff that was there was really technical when compared to the sort of stuff we'd seen. You know, a robot drawing a picture of a person that it's viewing through a camera at the time was amazing tech. Whereas obviously now people would think, well, not as exciting, but some great tech that we saw while we were there. Our next trip, which is, well, we're hoping February next year. I think we're being optimistic, but we've got 20 kids booked on, 20 kids have paid deposits. We've got a Cisco day organised, and because we've kept that contact, we've been down to Manchester to an event. We are hosting a virtual event in May, so we're just doing this event with them direct, just a morning. But we've kept that contact going. So we're talking 7-8 years later, still getting our hand in there with Cisco, making sure that if we do go, we get to go to see something. But it's great to actually just meet people, just the normal people that say they were a paramedic and they decided to join Cisco. And, you know, when we went down to, we did go to Bletchley Park, and while we were down there, we went to Cisco. And again, just that contact. So for us, it was more, we did a whistle-stop tour in the car, because obviously only 5 kids, we hired like a minivan rather than a coach. So we got to just have a bit of a tour around, but there's lots of things I'd love to have gone, and listening to you two talking about some of the places you've been to, they're definitely places that we want to go to next time. You know, museum, computer museum, definitely want to go. You know, there's certain things we'd like to go and see, but we had lots of other things we went to see which were more connected to the competition than they were necessarily connected to Silicon Valley. But we definitely benefited from being in San Jose to start with, just for distance. But we had a bit of a more of an unusual trip. But there's lots of things I'd like to go and see this time around. Hopefully we go next year, but maybe the year after at this rate. We'll see how it goes. So being optimistic for now.
Now, this is a question for anybody really on our panel tonight. I still think, and I remember when I first said to teachers, oh, we're going to do this panel event, I kept thinking at the back of my mind, somebody's going to go, what a ridiculous suggestion. Isn't it just like pie in the sky, this idea of taking children, you know, the other side of the planet to go there to visit companies that, do you not think, it's some kind of wildly ambitious, stupid idea? Or
they are awe-inspired when they see it though.
Yeah.
You know, when they see the size of the buildings, when they see when they just see things, it just puts it into perspective. It's real then. You talk about all these places, but when you see the signs when you're going past, when you see the size of, you know, Cisco Wave, and when you drive down, they're like, wow, look at the size of that fountain. Look at the size of that, you know. When you go inside and see the size of things, you know, they had like a listening center, which was just picking up tweets. And every time they mentioned anything to do with Cisco, it popped up on the screen. And they were talking them through all the different tech that was going on. They're amazed by it. And all they talked about was that person I did, like, I don't know, an engineer, you know, like the weird engineering degree, had nothing to do with anything, but now worked for this company. It's more conversations. It's the inspiration of going and seeing normal people, and actually they exist and they go on to do amazing things. So I think it's all about inspiration more than anything.
No, I definitely agree with that. I mean, we're from an area where pretty much all of the kids will do what their parents did, and they won't really look at much outside of the area. We're quite rural, even though we've got Cambridge, which is quite a tech hub, not too far away. We've got Industrial Park that is not too far away, but the students don't really seem to understand that that there is this kind of tech world. And I think they've heard of Silicon Valley and through films and that sort of thing, and to go there, the kids, it does inspire them. I've had a number from the first trip who've gone on to kind of computer science degrees, that when they were having a chat with the people that were there, they were looking at how they can get to there, not necessarily Silicon Valley as such, but to be able to do that kind of job where they're in that tech world.
Yeah.
A lot of them were thinking, well, okay, I've got family that lives in Ireland, so Google's got an Ireland branch, so I'm going to go over there. Or some people have actually, when we went to Stanford University, they actually were looking into the American university system, so they can compare it when they start to do their university applications over here as well. And it just gives them options, I think. And
Yeah,
like
definitely.
most of the kids, if you give them a chance to go over to America, I think they find it really useful, because they probably won't have that chance to necessarily go over and go to a university, because if they do go over to America, how many of their families are going to take them to a university visit, for example, or get them into a place like Google? So I think it's just that experience, isn't it?
So let's just say we go with the assumption there's a teacher watching this evening or in a week's time, and they go, do you know what? I'm starting to think that this is. So the first question, somebody's going to say to me, look, how much is this going to cost? Now, if we keep Becci here as well for the moment, you know, Becci, you've had to cost to go there, and I know you did other things at the same time. Martin, you have a figure that you know you will say to your students, look, it's going to cost you this much. And Theresa, even with, you know, some vice president steps in and says we'll pay for the flights, there's still going to be costs there. So one is, what are the costs and how might you mitigate them? How might you make them seem like it's worth the money?
I think for us, the first one I think cost about £1,400 for the students, and they did end up getting a little bit of that back because obviously we put in a buffer. Second time around, it was about 1,600. Again, they got some of that back to bring a kind of total cost of about 1,400. As I mentioned, we used the Pupil Premium. We did, for the first year, we did a little bit of fundraising to try and do it, like things like going to the supermarkets and doing bag packs and that sort of thing, just to build things up. I think probably the most important bit was just to kind of enforce that actually it's not that bad a price for what you're getting. It's an expensive trip. Yes, we're not putting that kind of not hiding that at all, because it is an expensive trip, but for that £1,600 you're getting the obviously your accommodation, your food, all the attractions, the coach hire, everything apart from any spending money that they choose to have, and by spreading the cost, I think that kind of helps a little bit as well. Try and do it over a 2-year bit so you can spread that cost is probably what I would say.
Becci, would you say the figure that Martin quoted, if you were to double it for you and your husband, £3,000, does that
I think
sound
it's really difficult for me to say, partly because I can't really remember how much it was, and partly because we were out there for over 2 weeks. So although the flight cost kind of would then kind of bring the overall cost down because we were out there for so long, we would then had, you know, staying in LA and we stayed in Vegas, and there was all sorts of other bits and pieces as well. So I think it'd be really hard for me to comment on cost, really. I think these two are the ones to talk about cost for trips, I think.
But the flights are, what, up to 500 return or something like that? They can vary depending on all sorts of
Depends
factors.
the time of year, and
that was the other thing. We went in the summer holidays because obviously we had no choice. We would automatically stuck with the expensive prices.
And in some of the less busy places, accommodation isn't massively different in cost from the UK. So you maybe talking about $80, $100 a night in budget accommodation.
I would. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go on. I know what you're going to say, I think.
Yeah, I would highly recommend just going cheap and cheerful. The hostels, I think, are brilliant because they've got the communal areas. And yeah, I think you're probably looking about $70 a room a night. But that obviously fits anywhere between kind of 4 kids to about 10 kids in, depending on the size as well. So it's not too bad.
If anybody does opt for a hotel in San Francisco, it is astronomical. Like it's comparative to like New York prices. So if you're going on a trip, like definitely do what Martin said and look for a hostel. It'll be so much cheaper. The hotel we stayed in, I was flabbergasted how much it cost.
Well, the property prices in that part of California, they're amongst it's the most expensive place to live in the world. You know, houses costing millions of dollars, you know, each. So you would expect that the hotels are going to have to recover some of that in some way.
We stopped in like a small family hotel in San Jose, which we found to be cheap in comparison to other ones. So the girls were sharing like 2 in a room, and they had a small pool, and there was hardly anyone else there. It was just a nice little place to stop. When we stopped in San Francisco, we stopped in a Best Western, and it wasn't in the best area in the world, is what I would say. You don't necessarily know if you've not been before. It was fine, but you know, you looked and thought, I won't be going outside there after about 6 o'clock in an evening. You're probably safer inside. But I think you don't know until you've been, you know, when you're looking at the hostel setup. We're looking at another hotel this time, but not in San Francisco, a bit in between. So we've sort of looked at one of the smaller areas outside of San Jose and aimed for somewhere smaller to stop rather than stopping in San Francisco. You're definitely paying massive premium to stop in San Francisco, definitely.
So Karen has asked a good question in the chat, which we'll come on to in a moment. Just about where you stay in the accommodation. When I've spoken to Theresa and Martin about the different choices, because Martin stayed exclusively in a hostel in San Francisco, where Theresa's group, you know, you split your accommodation. I could see the pros and cons. Where Martin's chosen, it was next to a park. There was areas where the students could go out, but they weren't next to the shops and theaters and stuff that they could go to. Whereas I, like 20 years ago, my brother and I, we traveled around some states and some cities, and it can be quite frightening. Things like crime, people just walking through the street brandishing guns. It comes as a bit of a shock, and particularly if you're a teacher and you've got somebody else's children with you. And we did see evidence of gun crime in cities, and they say, well, look, this is what happens when you live in a major city. When I heard Theresa talk about the hotel in San Jose, now San Jose is not a particularly beautiful city. It's not. It's a very metropolitan kind of sprawl. Yeah. But I can imagine that the students in some way might have had a little bit more freedom and might have seen a little.
Didn't go anywhere without.
Right.
They were under lock and key.
Okay.
They were like, these kids aren't going anywhere. We did have quite a young age group. We had one who was in year 8, so we had a real mixture. So we didn't really feel, but the groups we're taking next will be year 10 to year 13, so it's a slightly different thing. But with the younger ones, we were like, we just can't risk it. Some of them never left the country before. Someone hadn't left the area before, let alone the country. They were a bit naive. We even went on the subway and we were like, this is like, anyway.
Yeah. No, I mean, I didn't let my students, and I had up to 6th formers, like, and they completely understood. Like if they wanted to go down to the shop, we walked down with them, and just because I think it's just that element of you don't know what's going on. Unfortunately, there is a crime rate in San Francisco, and I think you just have to take that in your stride really, and just make sure that you plan to what you're going to do to kind of mitigate any risks. And so I think wherever you are within the city, I think it does get to a particular time, and you do notice that the crime is a possibility, unfortunately. But I think it's the same wherever you go.
Yeah.
Like if you took kids into London after kind of 5-6 o'clock, it's probably going to be fairly similar, isn't it?
Saying that, I have read some quite alarming reports about the high crime statistics in Silicon Valley and San Francisco. So worth bearing in mind. Right, there's one more thing we're going to discuss, and then I'm going to ask you for your final thing, just one tip you would give to a teacher, an independent traveler who's thinking of going there. So we'll come on to that in a moment. Karen in our YouTube chat, Karen said, are there any activities or scope to do things when they're there? Now I think Theresa has a response to that, but Martin and I recently, we've made contact with a teacher who teaches on the other side of the bay, sort of more Oakland way. And although Martin's trip is perhaps not for maybe 2 years, 18 months now or so, we're already starting to explore exchange kind of opportunities. I don't mean swapping the students like the French exchange kind of traditional thing, but more of get them to contact each other. Maybe they record a video, show it in class. And it's just a nice way, because, you know, if Martin has some students that thought that they were going in February next year and now they're going to have to wait another year, it might be enough just to keep the thing going warm. Yeah. And then we also talked with this teacher, I'll just call him Sean. possibly one evening, getting the students from the two schools together just to play something like a basketball game,
Nice.
maybe have like a little bit of a discussion about what, 5 questions about school in the UK, school in the US. So just so they get a bit more of a sort of the cultural experience. But I think, Theresa, you've also got, when they were at Cisco, they didn't just go around the offices, did they?
No. They were given like a challenge to do when they did some different activities, and they've talked to people using telepresence, so people in Sweden, people in New York. So they set it up so they could have that experience of being within their company. And the same when anytime we go and do any activity, that's what they try and do. Do you talk to people about their job as well? So we spoke to a lady who said if it hadn't been for the fact she could work from home, she would never have had the job that she's got. It was just opportunity. They just talk about opportunity more than anything, and things that they can do. But yeah, we always have an activity of some kind to do and be involved in, and a bit of feedback, some presentation, build all those skills up and get them a bit more confident talking to people. But they've just had some great activities. Right,
final question. Becci, Martin, Theresa, your top tip, what would you recommendation to somebody if you've not already given it?
I'm going to go on an absolute curveball and say, if you're in San Francisco, go on the Alcatraz tour.
Yeah,
Definitely.
It's nothing to do with computing, but you'll definitely have,
Yeah.
That was one that's highly rated as a top tourist destination in the world, not just on the West Coast.
No, it's brilliant, definitely. For me, I'd just say cram in as much as you possibly can in the time. I think one of the things is actually you don't need anything in the evenings because the kids are knackered. We flogged them. We properly flogged them. They were knackered at the end of every single day, but they appreciated it because there's so much to do there. Like I could quite easily probably spend 5-6 days just in Silicon Valley on its own without the other bits that we try and do just for more kind of a broader view of the city.
If
definitely.
you fit too much in, they can get grumpy, but it's the jet lag. You experience that when you come home rather than so you let the parents deal with it.
Yeah, that's it. We dump them off with the parents at the end and they can deal with it.
Yeah, because we've taken children me on school trips around the world, and sometimes kids, they turn into this Tasmanian devil thing, and they're just so tired from doing so much, and they don't sleep very much either. They don't get great quality sleep when they're there. Theresa, top tip?
Mine is just try and get a contact somewhere and try and get in somewhere, even if it's just one thing, even if it's just a tour inside somewhere. Try and just bug people, Twitter, however you want to contact people. You'll be surprised you get that one person who just goes, you know something, I know somebody, I can get you in somewhere.
And one of those, going along with that, Theresa, one of the things I've noticed is because, oh, you're in Preston. Oh, my great aunt so-and-so used to. Or, oh, your surname is Russell. Do you know, sometimes they are very much about trying to establish these connections with people. So make use of it,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for joining us. For the viewers at home, if for those people like myself, I don't really think I'm ever going to physically make it to Silicon Valley, sadly. Maybe, we're doing virtual trips and some of them are already available. So there's one where we go to the Android playground. It's 15 minutes long. You can try it at home with your family. You can try it in a school with a class. We've done another one. We go to Susan's garage. There's lots of garages around Silicon Valley that have historic connections, not just the HP. And there's another one that'll be coming out soon where we go inside Facebook. And Becci, gosh, we managed to find somebody at Facebook, employee number 1, who shows us what his desk looks like. So thank you very much for joining us all. We're going to end this stream first on YouTube. So goodbye, YouTube people. We're all waving here. Thank you. Right, the YouTube channel is finished. And Becci, thanks for staying till the end.
That's all right, don't worry.
I hope your peas didn't boil dry or or that somebody started on the ironing so you don't have to, perhaps. What I'll do later on, this will be available, but I'll go in and edit it because it'll be like 15 minutes of hello, we're going to start soon. And then I will publish the recording And then in the notes, I will put, Martin shared some links. I'll have a link to Becci's photos. And if there's anything that occurs to you, I can add those in afterwards. Thank you very, very much. And if there's any way I can help back repay the favor, just let me know, please. All right. If I
Okay.
click the red button in 5 seconds or so, it kind of, does that mean nobody has to be the first one to leave? Yeah.
Cheers, Alan. That was
3
really good.
Thanks, Alan.
seconds, 2,
Thank
1.
you.